Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What's going on, Blue Jays fans? Before we dive into everything happening around the league, let me ask you this. Is Ross Atkins about to make a move that changes everything, or are we sitting on our hands while division rivals load up for another playoff run? Stay with me, because what I'm about to break down could completely shift how you view this entire offseason. Make sure you smash that subscribe button because we're covering every Blue Jays development as it happens, and the next few days could be absolutely massive. All right, let's get right into it because while things have been a bit quiet on the Blue Jays front specifically, there's a ton happening around baseball that directly impacts Toronto. We're seeing division rivals making aggressive moves, free agents starting to come off the board, and the pitching market heating up in ways we haven't seen in years. So let's break down what's happening, what it means for the Jays, and where this team needs to go from here. First, let's talk about the pitching market because it's absolutely wild right now. The top arms still available are Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, and Michael King. And guess who's in on all of them? The Yankees, Red Sox, and Orioles. Our division rivals are circling these guys like sharks, and the reality is at least one of them is probably going to land in the AL East. That makes things even harder for Toronto because you're not just competing against these teams on the field, you're competing with them in free agency too. Here's what's fascinating. Usually by this point in the offseason, we've seen several big pitching signings already, but this year, teams are being cautious. Pitching is the ultimate commodity right now. Everyone needs it, and there just aren't enough quality arms to go around. Behind those top three, you've got guys like Lucas Giolito, Zach Greinke, if he decides to keep playing, Brandon Woodruff coming off injury, Zach Eflin, and former Blue Jay Chris Bassett. And speaking of Bassett, I've got to throw this out there. What if the Blue Jays brought him back as a swing guy? Someone who can eat innings, jump into the rotation if someone gets hurt, or even work out of the bullpen in high leverage spots. We saw what he could do at the end of last season in the postseason coming out of the pen. His pitch mix is ridiculous, and having that kind of versatility could be huge. Just a thought, but I'd love to see it happen. Now let's talk about what our rivals are doing because it matters. The Red Sox already grabbed Corbin Burnes earlier this offseason, along with some bullpen help. They've got Garrett Crochet and Brayan Bello at the top of their rotation, but they're not done. They want one more arm to solidify things. The Yankees are banking on Garrett Cole bouncing back healthy, plus they've got Max Fried and Carlos Rodon. They'll probably fill out the rotation with young guys like Luis Gil, but they're sniffing around these top free agents too. And then there's the Orioles, who just made a massive splash by signing Pete Alonso. They're not messing around anymore. After a rough year last season, they're making sure they're not left behind. Putting Alonso behind Gunnar Henderson in that lineup, that's terrifying for opposing pitchers. And now they're pushing hard for starting pitching too. Oh, and here's a curveball. The Yankees are apparently in on Kyle Tucker now. So the Blue Jays, who've been rumored to have interest in Tucker, suddenly have even more competition beyond just the Dodgers. Tucker would be an incredible addition to this lineup, but the asking price is going to be steep, and the Yankees have the prospect capital to make a real push. And that's something Toronto needs to be aware of as they navigate their own offseason plans. Speaking of the Blue Jays' plans, let's talk about Bo Bichette. There's been so much speculation about his future, and yesterday we might have gotten one team out of the running. The Atlanta Braves signed Yosin Kim to a one-year, $20 million deal, and he's projected to be their starting shortstop. That probably means the Braves are out on Bo. Now, I'm never going to completely count Alex Anthopoulos out. That guy is sneaky, and he's pulled off moves nobody saw coming before. You know, he could theoretically sign Kim for 1 year and still go after Bo on a long-term deal. But realistically, the Braves are probably done at shortstop, and that's good news for the Blue Jays. Bo's market is shrinking. There just aren't that many teams out there looking for an everyday shortstop who are willing to commit the kind of money and years Bo is going to command. If he comes back to Toronto, he's the everyday shortstop, no questions asked. The front office has been saying all the right things. Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, even ownership has talked about wanting Bo back, about how important he is to this team and this organization. But Blue Jays fans have heard talk before. We want action. Show us you're serious. Get the deal done. bring Bo back and lock him up long term so we can move forward and build around him, Vladdy, and the rest of this core. Now, here's where things get really interesting. There's a trade rumor brewing that I think could have legs. Ketel Marte, he's been linked to the Blue Jays and the Mets for a while now, and apparently he's willing to waive his no-trade clause for a lot of teams. But get this, the Yankees are on his no-trade list. He will not go to New York. Also on that list, the A's, Pirates, Cardinals, and Giants. So if any of those teams want him, he'd have to agree to waive it, and it doesn't sound like that's happening. The Mets and Blue Jays have been connected to Marty for weeks now. My guy Matt at Jays Journal has been all over this story, and honestly, I think he wants Ketel Marte in a Blue Jays uniform more than anyone. And look, I get it. Marte is a proven veteran who can play multiple positions, hits for average and power, and would instantly upgrade this lineup. The problem? We've got an embarrassment of riches in the outfield and middle infield already, plus a deep farm system. So what would it take to get Marte? Probably a package built around a major league ready player who can help Arizona right now. Someone like Jonathan Klass or Davis Schneider, plus maybe a prospect or two. You've got to give up something to get something, and the Diamondbacks aren't just going to hand over Marte for nothing. But here's the thing. If the Blue Jays are serious about competing in 2025, adding a player like Marte makes a ton of sense. He gives you depth, he gives you experience, and he gives you another bat that can do damage in the middle of the lineup. Pairing him with Bo, Vladdy, and the rest of this core would be huge. The question is whether Ross Atkins pulls the trigger and makes the move. We've seen the Jays be cautious in the past, and sometimes that caution costs them. This might be a time where they need to be aggressive. So let me ask you this. Who do you think lands first? Do you think the Blue Jays sign Bo Bichette before Christmas? Do you think they pull off a trade for Ketel Marte? Or do you think we're sitting here in January still waiting for something to happen? My gut says Bo gets signed before the holidays. I think ownership knows how bad it would look to head into the new year without locking up one of the faces of the franchise. But I've been wrong before, and the Blue Jays have surprised us in both good and bad ways over the years. What I do know is this. The AL East is loading up. The Orioles added Alonso. The Red Sox have Burns. The Yankees are always in the mix. If Toronto wants to compete, they can't afford to sit back and hope things work out. They've got the pieces. They've got the prospects. They've got the payroll flexibility. Now it's time to use it. Get Bo signed. Make a move for another bat or another arm. Show the fan base and the rest of the league that this team is serious about winning. I'll be here breaking down every move, every rumor, every piece of news as it develops. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment letting me know what you want to see the Blue Jays do next. Should they prioritize bringing back Bo? Should they go after Marte? What's your dream scenario for this offseason? Let's talk about it down below. Thanks for watching, and as always, let's go Blue Jays.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
You're watching this thinking it was just another minor roster shuffle, but what if I told you the Blue Jays just made a move that reveals exactly where their priorities are right now? Ryan Borucki is officially gone, traded to Cleveland, and the way this went down tells us everything about how management views this team's window. What's up, Blue Jays faithful, and welcome back to the channel where we cut through the noise and give you the real story behind every move Toronto makes. I'm here breaking down the baseball that matters, and today we need to talk about a transaction that happened fast, happened quiet, and happened for a reason. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below because we're diving into what this actually means for the roster construction moving forward. Now, let's be honest about where the Blue Jays bullpen stands right now. This hasn't been some dominant lockdown unit that gives you confidence in close games. It's been inconsistent at best and downright terrifying at worst. Some nights you get shutdown innings. Other nights you're watching leads evaporate before the ninth inning even arrives. The command issues, the inability to put hitters away in crucial spots, the constant juggling of roles because nobody's grabbing hold of the opportunity. All of it has created this environment where you never quite know what you're getting on any given night. That's the backdrop for understanding why certain moves start happening and why a guy like Ryan Borucki suddenly finds himself on the outside looking in. Baruki wasn't some random arm they picked up off waivers last month. This was a homegrown pitcher, someone the organization drafted and developed, someone who at various points showed flashes of being a legitimate piece of the puzzle. There was a time when people talked about him as a potential starter, back when his stuff looked promising enough to imagine him working deeper into games. That didn't pan out, so the transition to the bullpen made sense. And for a minute there, especially in 2020, it actually worked. He posted solid numbers, gave the team reliable left-handed innings, and looked like he'd carved out a role he could hold for years. That version of Baruki felt like a success story for player development. But baseball has this brutal way of making yesterday's answers irrelevant if you can't sustain it. What we've seen recently isn't that 2020 version. What we've seen is a pitcher who's lost the strike zone more often than he's found it, who gets hit hard when he does throw strikes, and who simply doesn't have the stuff to get out of jams when runners are on base. This season he appeared in 11 games and got absolutely shelled. We're talking about an ERA approaching double digits, barely 6 innings pitched, and results that made it impossible to trust him in any meaningful situation. When your bullpen's already shaky and you've got a guy putting up those kinds of numbers, something has to give. So the Blue Jays designated him for assignment earlier this week, which basically told the league he was available and Toronto was ready to move on. Then Cleveland stepped in with cash considerations, which is front office speak for we'll take him off your hands for basically nothing. No prospect return, no player to be named later, just cash and a roster spot opening up. Baruki's officially a Guardian now, and Toronto closes the book on 5 years of trying to turn him into a consistent contributor. Here's where it gets interesting, though. This wasn't just about Baruki's struggles. This was about what those struggles represented and what the front office is willing to tolerate right now. For years, the Blue Jays operated with this patient developmental mindset. They'd give guys extended looks, work through rough patches, bet on the talent, and the process eventually clicking. That approach works when you're building towards something, when the timeline allows for experimentation and growth. But the Blue Jays aren't in that phase anymore. They're supposed to be competing. They've got an expensive roster full of stars who are in or entering their prime years. Patience stops being a virtue when wins are on the line and the division's up for grabs. Moving Baruki sends a message internally that's louder than any press conference could. It says performance is what matters, not history, not potential, not the fact that we invested 5 years into you. If you can't help us win games right now, there's no spot for you. That's a different mentality than we've seen from this front office in previous years, and whether you think it's overdue or too harsh probably depends on your level of frustration with how this season's unfolded so far. From a practical standpoint, clearing Baruki off the 40-man roster does 2 things. First, it opens a spot to bring in someone else, whether that's a younger arm from AAA who's been performing better, a different veteran they want to take a flyer on, or just flexibility to make another move when the opportunity presents itself. Second, it eliminates the internal debate about whether to keep giving him chances. Sometimes addition by subtraction is real, and when a guy's track record over the last few months is consistently bad, removing that option forces the coaching staff to look elsewhere and potentially find better answers. Now let's talk about Cleveland for a second, because their side of this matters too. The Guardians needed bullpen help, specifically left-handed bullpen help, and they're willing to bet that a change of scenery might unlock something in Baruki that Toronto couldn't find. It's a low-risk gamble for them. They give up basically nothing. They get a guy with big league experience who's shown in the past he can be effective, and maybe their pitching development staff sees something mechanical or strategic they think they can fix. To make room on their roster, they designated Connor Pilkington, so they're clearly comfortable taking these kinds of calculated risks when the cost is minimal. For Blue Jays fans, the question isn't really whether Cleveland can rehab Baruki's career. Good for them if they do. The question is what Toronto does with this roster spot and whether they can actually stabilize a bullpen that's been a liability more often than not. Because here's the thing, trading away one struggling reliever doesn't fix the deeper issues. The bullpen still has command problems, still lacks that shutdown arm you can trust with the game on the line, still feels like it's one bad outing away from completely falling apart. This move is a step toward addressing those problems, but it's only a step. What this really represents is a shift in organizational philosophy. The Blue Jays are acting like a team that believes its window is now, not tomorrow, not 2 years from now. That means less tolerance for underperformance, less willingness to wait for guys to figure it out, and more urgency to find solutions that work immediately. Whether that's the right approach depends entirely on whether they can actually find those solutions and whether the rest of the roster performs up to expectations. But the intent is clear. So where does that leave us? Ryan Baruchi's gone, and with him goes 5 years of organizational investment that ultimately didn't produce the consistent results they needed. The bullpen remains a work in progress, and the front office has made it clear they're willing to make hard decisions to try to upgrade it. The next few weeks will tell us whether this was just the first domino to fall or whether it's an isolated move. Either way, it's a signal that things are changing in how Toronto approaches its roster construction, and that's worth paying attention to going forward. All right, Blue Jays Nation, that's the breakdown on the Baruchi trade and what it means for where this team is headed. Drop a comment below with who you think should get the next shot in that bullpen. Hit the like button if you want to see more analysis like this, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because roster moves are happening fast, and we're covering all of it right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.